This video will show you how to replace the thermostat on a Mitsubishi Lancer. This will be located along the driver's side of your engine. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. We're going to have to drain the engine coolant, so of course the engine and all related components need to be cooled to the touch. Now after that, we're going to make our way over to our coolant cap right along here. We're going to be turning this counterclockwise so we can remove it. Just a quick inspection and we'll set it aside. And now we can start draining the coolant, so we'll make our way safely under the vehicle. We're underneath the passenger side front corner of the vehicle, and this is where we can see our forward splash shield. Looking just up in this area, we can see the lower mount of our radiator. That's this small tab right along here, and this is the radiator mount. Now where that small tab is, there's actually a port that goes up into the coolant channel of the radiator. If you were looking up along this rectangular port on the splash shield, you could see that the drain plug is tucked right up inside this area. You could try to reach up in here and loosen it this way. It's kind of a tight area. If you find you have an issue, just carefully remove your 3 pieces of hardware making its way across this area so we can pull it down enough to make our way up and inside. For these, I'm using an 8mm. It looks like they've been replaced, but typically they're a 10mm mounting tool. We've got some room there. Now I've got those 3 bolts out. You can tell there is a little bit of room here. If you just pop one of these push clips out, it's going to give you just a tiny bit more, which is going to help you get your hand inside that area. For that, I'm just using a trim tool. We're carefully starting to remove the center to unlock it. Then you can dislodge it, and now we can make our way right up in here. We do have our collection receptacle under here, so we can collect and recycle all of our fluid. Now we can see we do have the coolant making its way into the collection receptacle. We'll let this continue draining, and we'll continue on. Now we're back up inside the engine compartment, and we're going to be focusing along the air filter housing itself. You're going to find that you have 2 locking tabs. Just go ahead and disconnect those by swinging them over, and you can remove your air filter. You want to give that a thorough inspection. If it looks like it's dirty, go ahead and replace it. Now we actually want to dislodge this entire box and tube. So we're stopping at the mass airflow sensor electrical connector. It has a locking tab. Just go ahead and squeeze it in and pull that out of place. A quick inspection for corrosion there. Now we have a breather hose up along this area that leads over towards our valve cover. We're just going to disconnect it from the air inlet tube. Squeeze on that clamp. You can use some pliers if necessary. Just slide that off of there. You want to make sure the hose is soft and pliable, not torn, worn, or damaged. We're going to follow this down towards the throttle body next. You're going to find that you have a clamp that looks just like this one right here. It's fairly difficult to see, but you'll be using a 10mm to loosen it enough that we can slide it off of the throttle body. So we can see the head of that deep down in this area. Just going to use my 10mm and a 1/4 inch ratchet. Now we can lift this up and out of position. We'll just give this a quick inspection. It's common for these to be torn in some way. If it is, you need to replace it. This looks fine. Set it aside. With that out of the way, we can see our thermostat housing. We can see one piece of our mounting hardware. The other one's located tucked down in this area. It's easier to gain access to it if you remove this portion of the air filter housing as well. Now with that said, let's start removing our mass airflow sensor wiring harness from the air filter housing. I'm just using a small trim tool as a prying device here. Pull that out of place. Now we have to dislodge this plastic portion of the air inlet. So you're going to find that you have 2 plastic push clips. There's one here, there should be one right there, and they generally will look the same. One of ours is missing. Just go ahead and take hold of that. Now we're sliding it away from the air filter housing here. It slides out of place. Now for this portion of the air filter housing, you only have one piece of mounting hardware down in this area just behind the battery. You'll be using a 10mm to remove it. The housing itself is going to have 2 rubber grommets down along the bottom, and those slide onto 2 studs which are part of the body of the vehicle. So we should be able to just gently lift this up and out of position. Looking along the bottom, we have 1 rubber grommet here and 1 right there. Now this area is wide open, and we can see our lower radiator hose where it leads to the thermostat housing here. We're going to squeeze on the clamp and we'll attempt to remove the hose from the thermostat housing. Keep in mind there could be coolant in this area. Have your collection receptacle under here so you can recycle all that fluid properly. You can use some pliers. I also have these hose pliers, so I'm going to use those. Slide it up the hose a little bit there. Now you may find that the hose is stuck on the thermostat housing. If that's the case, use a small hose pick to break it free. We'll just be extremely careful not to cause any damage to the hose itself. Just work our way around, breaking it free. Now you can reach underneath the battery tray and carefully slide that out of place. A quick inspection of the hose, it's soft and pliable, not torn, worn, or damaged. Now that we've got that hose off of there, we're going to start focusing on our mounting bolts. We can see one 12mm bolt up along the top here. We have a second one down in this area, but you're also going to find that you have a third bolt right here. We're going to start with that third bolt. This is a smaller bolt. We're using a 10mm. It's holding this bracket in place. There's that mounting bolt. We can see the bracket can separate easily. Our 12mm bolt next. There's our next mounting bolt. Now we can take hold of the housing. We're going to attempt to give it a wiggle. It may not fall out of place easily. You may have to tap it with a hammer. With that out of the way, we have a clear view of our vehicle's thermostat. Now this is just pressed into place here, so I'm going to take hold of it and attempt to give it a wiggle. The seal will typically hold it in place. If you find that you have a hard time removing it by hand, you could carefully grab it with some pliers. Let's just be extremely careful not to cause any damage. There it is, friend. Prior to installation of any part, of course, we're going to make sure we clean and inspect the mounting surface. I'm using a clean rag, no type of detergent here. I don't want anything making its way into my cooling system. We're just going to give it a quick wipe and confirm there's no miscellaneous debris, especially on the inner port here where the seal is going to ride. All right, let's get ready to install that thermostat. Of course, we want to make sure the seal will seat, but we want to make sure we have it in the proper orientation. This small weep hole up along the top here should be at the top. You don't want to have it placed in any other position. We'll start bringing this into position. We'll double check to make sure we're properly aligned. Our weep hole is up along the top there. That's essentially a vent. Now that we have that in place, the next thing we have to do is pay attention to the mating surface on the inboard side of our thermostat housing. We're just going to give this a quick wipe and a close inspection. Okay, it's time to install our thermostat housing. When we slide this into place, we're making sure that the bracket is on the outboard side there. That's where the 10mm bolt's going to go, but we're starting along the top with our 12mm bolt first. Let's go ahead and line that up and start it in. We've left that loose enough that we can maneuver it around. It's time for the next 12mm headed bolt down in this lower corner here. Now that I have both of those snug, I'm torquing them to 18 foot-pounds. There's that one. Let's get this one up here. Now the next thing we need to do is align that mounting bracket down there and start in the mounting bolt. It looks as though mine's already pretty much aligned here. Not much to do, so let's continue on with that bolt. Okay, bottomed out. Just a tiny bit further there. We want to make sure that bracket's secured. Now it's time for that lower radiator hose onto our thermostat housing. We're going to press it all the way up to this point right along here. After that, just go ahead and reinstall the clamp into the original positioning. See right here, it's not completely aligned yet. We need to continue pressing. This clamp has to be adjusted. Now that I have that clamp in place, I'm going to reach under this area, hold onto the hose, and attempt to remove it from that thermostat housing. As you can tell, it does not slide out of place. If it does move around, just go ahead and replace this clamp. Now it's time for the air filter housing. We're paying attention to those two rubber grommets on the housing itself. Looking at the body of the vehicle, we have a tray here that has those two tabs for this to slide onto. Just go ahead and line it up, press it on. We have our 10mm bolts. Just go ahead and start that in and snug it up. Now we have the next portion of our air filter housing. We're going to be focusing on the air inlet tube that leads down to the throttle body. We have to press this all the way onto the throttle body as far as possible, and then we're tightening our 10mm headed clamp, ensuring it's in the proper placement and snug. Got that pressed on there. We'll just make sure it's nice and tight with our 10mm. Make sure that's tight. You don't want any dirty or unmetered air making its way into the engine. Now we're making our way up to the vent tube here. Slide that on. Now we need to pay attention to the two portions of the air filter housing. On the bottom of this one, you have two locating tabs, and on the bottom of this, you have two slots. We need to make sure they're aligned. Just line it up like that. Slides right in. It's time for the air filter next. We'll make sure we have that in the proper orientation so the filtering portion is facing towards where the air inlet tube port is. Slide it right in there. Now, once you feel as though you do have it properly aligned, this should fit together. We're gently squeezing and locking it in. Once you have that together, just go ahead and take hold of this, and we're attempting to separate it. It should not slide apart. Common areas for this to slide apart would be down at the bottom if it's not latched in properly. It's time for the mass airflow sensor. We have our electrical connector. Just go ahead and line that up. We're going to press it in. Audible click, a light tug. Let's secure that wiring harness into the box here. Now we have the air inlet tube that's going to slide into that air filter housing. Along the front, you have the area for two plastic push clips. Our vehicle was missing one. I'm installing the one I do have. We'll make sure that's secured in place. Now that this has finished draining into our collection receptacle, let's go ahead and close that drain plug. Make sure it's nice and tight. You don't want to leak from this area. We'll clean up any mess and reinstall our shield across the front. Now we'll reinstall our push pin in the corner here. It's a nice tight fit, and continue on to our mounting bolts. Double check to make sure that's secured in place. Now it's time to fill the cooling system. You can either use a specialty tool or you can use a funnel that looks like this. We're going to be using the manufacturer's specified coolant. Now once we do start the vehicle, we're going to turn it right back off after approximately 5 seconds so we can triple check our belt, confirming it's seated properly so we don't cause any damage. Assuming it is, go ahead and start the vehicle and let it run. We want to try to remove any air from inside the cooling system. Now I just turned off the vehicle. I ran it until the cooling fans turn on. At that point, the engine should be at normal operating temperature, the thermostat opened, and the coolant can circulate throughout the entire system, removing any air. Now I can remove my funnel. We'll make sure we reinstall our coolant cap, turning it clockwise until it's completely locked down. Okay friend, we've got our vehicle back together and we've topped off our coolant. The next thing you need to do is make sure you clean any mess, double check for leaks, and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.